In most conversation with worried parents of late, I get these two questions a lot. How can I help my child with their online education? They're stuck in front of this camera or the screen whole day and they don't move around, they don't meet their friends, and it's not easy for them for sure. That's true. That's actually true. The second point that I get a lot is, can graphology really help students, kids, parents, teachers to understand and deal with the situation better? In today's conversation with a veteran educationist, we will be answering all these questions and much more. Welcome to the second season of the Absolutely Right podcast, the very first graphology based podcast in India. I'm your host, Aditi Surana. I am a graphologist and a high performance coach. The format of our show is slightly different. Actually, very different. Most of the time, people are interviewed on podcast shows and they talk about their journeys, their life experiences. Here on our show, we do something really different. I look at people's handwriting and talk about deeper aspects of their personality. We understand why do they make the decisions the way they do. I get to really look at the success traits and the behaviors that you can learn from. So every time I walk into the description of their behavior and handwriting, I also talk about the stroke. And on our YouTube channel, you can actually see the video formats where you can see the real strokes in the handwriting of our guest. So you can learn whether those traits are applicable to you, whether you have the trait in your handwriting or not. I must confess, I am a bit nervous to meet our guest today. Mrs. Damayanti Bhattacharya is a recipient of Iconic Leadership Award, a veteran educationist over 30 years of experience, and a principal of Jasudben ML School and Bloomingdales Pre-Primary. I am a bit nervous because as an adult, I have come to accept myself as a dyslexic person and have learned to accept all the imperfection that it brings. But as a child, that was not the easiest thing. I struggled with all my school interactions with people, especially with authorities like principals. So, talking to people in that fraternity is not my most comfortable thing to do. Having said that, I think it is need of the hour that we speak to teachers and understand their perspective and what we can do for our kids to make their life easier and better. You should listen to this interview for two, three reasons. First one is, how can you learn about your child, especially in the lockdown online schooling space? Second one is how graphology can help. Third, as I describe Mrs. Bhattacharya's handwriting, you will learn those strokes for yourself, which I feel is a revealing fact and revealing process. Now, if you're ready to dive deeper in your own self through this conversation, then tune in. Just to repeat myself, Absolutely Right is available in audio format on all major podcasting platforms and in a video format on our YouTube channel Aditi Surana and on my website aditisurana.com. Now, before we show you the actual interview, let me tell you Mrs. Bhattacharya is skeptical about graphology and its ability to analyze people accurately. I hope I change her perspective. Check it out. Welcome, Mrs. Bhattacharya. I'm so happy to have you as my guest. And I must say, I am slightly nervous talking to a principal on the show because I'm a dyslexic and I always felt scared to walk into any principal's office throughout my childhood.
Thank you, Aditi, for asking me to come on this show. And just to put you in peace, I want to say that children with learning difficulties have always been my best friends.
That is a relief for sure.
Yeah.
So, many times when we look at teachers, when they are teaching a particular subject, they also become the authority in that subject and authority in life. And that leads to so many other ways of functioning being influenced by the authoritative way of functioning. Now, I must say, when I look at your writing, that is one thing I tried looking for and I couldn't find actually. I couldn't find the authoritative, stern behavior. I rather see a little girl learning new things every single day. So according to me, you are a very curious person. And one interesting thing about that curiosity is the curiosity about the future. What can happen if I try this? So you're experimental with ideas, and so much so that other principals or people from your community, the principal, the teaching community might be wondering, why are you so free flowing? Do you get that?
Yes, and I completely agree with you there that somewhere I think I was thrown into this leadership position, and somehow
Okay.
it grew on me and I grew into it. And I would say one of the reasons why I could grow as a leader is because I was willing to explore.
Hmm.
And because I was willing to look at other things, and other perspectives and other aspects, I think that helped me tremendously in my growth as a leader. So, yes, you're right. I am very curious and I want to try things, and that I think
Hmm.
drives my teachers up the wall sometimes. So, yeah, but I'm always looking for ways to innovate, to create, and I just love that. And that, I think that's the best part of my job.
I can imagine. And I think kids being around them and learning from them every single day would
Yes.
be your, like, I can tell that is your passion because,
My mind
you
is
know,
completely open. I'm open to any kind of learning.
true. I agree with you looking at your writing too. Now, you are highly independent, and I'm giving this thing also for our listeners. When we write the personal pronounced I, which is the capital I, like we always have to write that first letter I without any horizontal lines. If it is only a single vertical line, then that capital I talks about somebody being completely independent in their outlook. So, no matter how tough the situation gets, you look for your own perspective, your independent perspective. And when you get that, people may consider you stubborn in that way because you will not budge, you will not change because you have complete clarity. Till the point you are exploring, you're learning, you're easygoing, you're flowing with things, and you are experimenting with whatever result that may come out. But once you make up your mind, once you bring that clarity to the table, you will not change without having enough logical reasoning on the other side. Now, one aspect of being a teacher is also constantly being available for people to ask you questions and come to you for all the solutions and problems that get to you. And you have, for some reason, never falter on that idea. You love doing that for people. You love solving problems. And at the same time, you sit there and figure out what all possible options this person can go through. It's like a little mental game, and that mental activity is your stimulation. I believe in during the lockdown, when you did not get enough of questions your way, you felt bored by that. You're like, oh, I think I'm used to more stimulation than what I'm getting.
Aditi, I think you stay inside my head, huh? Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So
Yes.
so over to you. What questions do you have, and what
So,
all you would like to talk about?
how good do you think I am at resolving conflicts?
Hmm. I think you do that a lot, and you have become better at it with practice. So conflicts used to get to you because you used to get completely involved with people in that conflict, and you're very protective by nature. So you, whomever you felt were the right people, right party, you went all out to
Hmm.
protect those people from any possible harm, and you always remained invested in conflicts because you wanted to protect people, you wanted to make sure that they find the right answer. With time you have realized the power of having a neutral ground. So now you become a platform for people to voice out their opinions and say things for what they are. And I believe you consciously work at refraining yourself from taking any entertaining any biases. So you do not jump in and say this is right or that is wrong. You literally create a platform for people to figure it out. And I believe that's why many of your teachers would be coming to you for with their conflicts to get them resolved, because they know that you would create an environment for them to figure it out, and you will not spoon feed them, which is very nice actually as a leader if you look at that.
My college mates and I, we have made a WhatsApp group.
Hmm.
So some of my college mates have pulled out a sort of a yearbook kind of a thing, and
Okay.
where we wrote to each other on the last day after graduation, etc. So in that, somebody pulled out something that I had written to that girl.
Okay.
So I find that my handwriting was uh, completely different. And what
Hmm.
this was when I was 20,
Hmm.
19, 20 years old. So does it
Okay.
happen that handwriting? How is it that and it's completely different from what it is now. I had lots of curves. It was very rounded, you know, very embellished
Right.
kind of handwriting. So what happened? I mean, how does that transition? I mean, what happens? How does it change?
This reminds me, yesterday I had a practice class with my graphology students. So I teach
Hmm.
graphology, and these people, we keep practicing it, same traits, different writing sample. Being a Republic Day, we decided to pick up Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar's handwriting
Hmm.
from 1921 and then
Wow.
from 1957. And when
Okay.
we looked at visibly, when we looked at both these samples, the handwriting had shifted completely. And you
Okay.
wonder if this person is the same person.
Okay.
And what you're saying is actually it's a question I answered yesterday, because we were like looking at this diverse shift in someone's personality. Now let's take a moment and understand what is personality. It is never this fixed idea, right? Like when a child goes to one school instead of other, because of the environment, because of the interaction, his personality is shaped differently. Having said that, every child won't have an identical personality, because some part he brings to the table and other part he gets molded into.
Right.
As even as adults, the situations, the emotional imprints that we have from the environment, we are constantly interacting with it. So I always say personality is a process. Now,
Okay.
where you began when you were 20 was probably the starting point of your adult life. But everything that you went through now today, like the embellishment that you were talking about, is also about expressing your thoughts with more intent in it, making it more decorative, if in some ways, like having the layers and nuances. Now today, being a principal, making sure that your work is done, making sure the unit or the structure of the organization works in the way it should, is your priority. And having that time spent on that expression is not the liberty that you can afford to have today. Now, if that is the case, the handwriting is only representing how you think. You didn't change your handwriting consciously, though you must have written way more than most people,
Yeah.
and you would have stayed in touch with the physical act of writing. Still, you did not make those specific changes consciously. But as the mind changes, as the brain, personality, everything is moving forward, like our bodies, the handwriting, which is in a way extension of your mind, is also changing. And that's why I find it so accurate and so fascinating, because it captures the changes that you have gone through, and that's why accurately it can talk about those minute details.
Okay. So going by the handwriting that I have, the sample that you have, what are the things that I can do better?
Okay.
What are the areas
First
that I
and
should work on myself as a leader?
First and foremost, the thing that come to my mind is the amount of irritation that you go through during the day, and also getting irritated with yourself for not being able to deliver what you had decided to deliver. I think that is one thing that I would not say you become self-critical, but yes, impatience and irritations, on momentary things. Both of them are your very close friends, if not best friends. So we probably have to break up with them.
Okay. All right.
Second aspect, which I would think you must work on, is physical writing. I believe you have the natural knack for writing. You love the whole idea of expressing yourself. And in this rigmarole and all your responsibilities, you do not get a breather to do that. Now, your writing is straight. Anybody with a vertically straight slant in handwriting, the direction of the movement of the writing, we call it slant. So if it is vertically straight, almost 90-degree to the baseline, we call it the person is way more matured before time. So they really love their own personal time, and they love to evaluate. They love socializing, but not at cost of having their personal world taken care of. Now that is something I feel you haven't been doing with lot of discipline and priority. You kind of divide your time between all the people around you, but you will recharge yourself much more when you are by yourself, and when you consciously give that time to recover from all the interactions, if I may say, that you go throughout your day.
The course of the day.
That would,
Okay.
yeah, that would
Okay.
be very, very important.
Okay. So tell me, Aditi, something like this, an art, this art of knowing, the science rather, of knowing how to read handwriting. how can I use it in my school? So the one thought that came to me is, uh, uh, would it help if I was able to use it? Um, would it help my teachers uh, to I don't know really how I'm going to reach out to them, but to understand their children better, the children in the classroom better. Is this it? Can I use it like this, and how?
So, graphology can talk about learning abilities and disabilities. It can talk about the style in which you process information, how you make decisions,
Mm,
how you decipher what exactly you are looking at based on your processing mechanism. Now, with all due respect, our education system is built in a way that we teach one thing to all kids, and we believe everybody would understand without
right.
realizing that they may or may not
Absolutely.
have those faculties. And being a dyslexic, I struggled through the process. So when I on the other side, when I talk to teachers now, I feel understanding the internal frame of reference that a child operates from is crucial.
Yes.
And if we can do that, then the messaging becomes deeper and better. So most kids feel misunderstood by people around them,
Yes.
because
Yes.
instead of talking to them in the manner they understand the information, adults try to tell them what is right or what is wrong. And this
Correct.
is where the biggest challenge happens. So when I talk to parents on the basis of their kids writing, I tell them about what the child is going through and how the child is interpreting the information they're throwing his way. And I'm using the word throwing very carefully because that's what end up happening in most parenting situations. Now, this is where I feel teachers can play an important role. Imagine if you understand your child, and we use this example a lot. If somebody writes the letter Y, and if it is 50% line, it goes down and never comes back. Now, if a child has that kind of writing, that shows that he loses interest 50% through the journey. So he starts with a lot of enthusiasm, and after 50% he cannot function. Now, the same child, if he's punished every day for not being able to finish his homework, believing that he's lazy, he's uninterested, or if he forces himself and his mother is like screaming at him, then the whole idea of learning is not liberating for anybody in this scenario. But if a teacher can understand the child has this as a tendency, and probably talk to him in a manner understanding that is his internal frame of reference, the same communication can be done in a different way. If he understands that, okay, I lose interest after 50%, and if he creates shorter schedules for that matter, he like, instead of 40 minutes, if he does 20 minutes where his interest is maintained, that works even better. Now,
Right.
these are the behavioral shifts we can have. Another example is defiance. Many kids, especially when they're going through their teenage period, they develop this idea of defiance, and it is
Right.
seen in the handwriting with a lowercase k that suddenly becomes uppercase.
I
So you're
see.
writing a word, and one, if you're writing best of luck, so the k becomes uppercase where it
Huh.
shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be.
But that is a sign of defiance. Now, with defiance, kids want to fight. They want to like say no to anything that is told to them in an authoritative manner.
Okay.
A small communication change, if a teacher, instead of saying you must do it, says to this particular child that you do it or you don't do it as you
Okay.
like, the very moment a defiant person has a choice, he cannot decide how to fight the authority, because if he does it, he's fighting the authority. If he doesn't, he's still fighting the authority. So in that confusion, he ends up making a choice. Otherwise, this child turns into a rebel for sure. Now, these are the smaller implementation or applications of graphology for teachers.
Right. So I was just thinking that in a classroom scenario, look, I want to help my I was just thinking that as a principal of the school, I would like to help my children through this. So I was just thinking, like, for learning disability, we look out for some classic symbols of, dysgraphia or dyslexia or
Right.
any other kind of learning disability. There's some classic ones. See, for most of us, all this is very new. So, for example, our first brush with dyslexia was Tare Zameen Par. And
Right.
I think it's remained there only. I don't think we have
Unfortunately,
gone, we have not gone beyond that. Yeah. So, but anyway, at least there in that film, Amir Khan tried to bring out certain aspects of how, if you remember that scene where how to a child with learning disability, how the letters would be going up and down, and that's why he can't read, if you remember that scene.
Right, of
So,
course.
is there similarly in graphology? Is there some book, or are there some classic, uh, you know, um, classic, very clear cut and classic samples of in that would indicate that this child has this emotional issue, or this child, is there something like that? Because look, going into the subject in depth is not possible. Then that becomes a different area of study, like you have
True.
done, which is altogether you must have studied over the years and gone into. So how can I help my teachers help the children, is what I'm asking you.
So there are research materials available where they have spoken about different emotional issues. But unfortunately, graphology over a period of time, as the digitalization happened, people stopped
Mm-hmm.
doing the research the way they used
Right,
to.
right,
So
right,
the
right,
newer
right,
challenges or newer, concepts that people now talk about,
right.
people haven't unfortunately done enough research to say for dyslexia this is an issue, for
Okay.
dysgraphia this is a particular handwriting stroke.
Uh-huh.
Having said that, we have another aspect of graphology called graphotherapy. We all have done that in while growing up. We practiced one handwriting stroke repetitively till we got a hang of it, right? Like
Hmm,
while
hmm,
learning the
hmm,
letters or writing. Now graphotherapy is using a particular stroke to give specific instruction to the child's mind. So once the child is diagnosed in a way for a particular issue, then we can look at his writing and figure out if he or she can use certain graphotherapy to build more concentration, to build long term memory, if that is a concern. So
right,
those
right.
things can be done as a corrective method, and I feel that is very powerful. For example, if I have to do a lot of talking or writing, which wasn't the easiest thing for me, I do my graphotherapy, which enhances your flow of thinking, creativity, and the flow of communication. So when I
Hmm,
do that, and I know when I have days filled with that kind of work, it
hmm.
helps to do that mental work before I walk into it. It's just an
Okay,
add-on thing, but it is really helpful. So
okay,
similarly, other things, other kids with different challenges can implement those graphotherapies, and that work I have done with kids, I have done with
okay,
adults, so that we can definitely count on and work towards it. So that shouldn't be a
okay.
problem.
I know. Okay, thank you. Okay. So tell me, I've read something very interesting about graphology. I believe in the ancient days they used to identify criminals
Mhm.
uh, by looking at their handwriting samples. Is that right?
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
so we have references of Sherlock Holmes doing that and
Yes.
using
Yes.
graphology even in his movies and
That's right.
series. Yeah,
That,
of course. Yeah.
that's right. And also, that's the reason why I remember when I was first applying for a job, which is many, we have to give handwritten applications. And
Right.
I think I now understand why, besides the grammar and the way you've written, etc., the tone of the letter, etc., it's also, I think, the handwriting. I think um, some institutions, they have this to identify possible criminal traits or things like that that a person may be having. So
Sure,
that's
sure.
that
So,
is very interesting. Whether
so
the
in
teacher is
Germany,
suitable. Yeah,
yeah, in Germany, they did a lot of research on selection process based on graphology.
correct,
And
correct.
they developed these ways in which they can find out whether you're
Hmm.
suitable for this
For
job
a
or not. So if you're a
correct.
creative person, and if
Yeah.
you're supposed to do, say, an accountant's job where you have to
Huh,
follow only the structure and only the instructions,
huh.
you'll not be good, not because you're not good as a person, but only
Yeah.
because your skill set doesn't match.
Doesn't match
Yeah.
exactly. Yes. Okay, so that's very interesting. So Aditi, how long have you been doing these things? This
Almost 16 years now.
and what made you choose graphology as an area?
So
Because I
with
you
all
don't
honesty, dyslexia, which I have spoken so much on this show,
I
because
see. I see.
I remember going to a personality development course, and a teacher asked us to draw some zeros. And she said, how many zeros can you draw in a minute? So all of us came up with some numbers, and she said, now I'm going to time you and just go ahead and draw. The
Mm-hmm.
assignment was simple. Either you reach that number or you don't. And then either you evaluate yourself, or over,
Mm-hmm.
evaluate yourself. Now, when people drew these circles, for some
Mm-hmm.
reason, I looked at those zeros, and something started, those the movie scenes where the Tare Zameen Pe, the whole numbers are going all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Something happened magical in that moment. I looked at those zeros, and patterns emerged out of them. So I looked at these people. I did not know all of them, but I described their cupboards, I described how they communicate, I described how they function in particular situation, and all of us were shocked. I had never done that before, and I had no clue. I was probably 13 or 14 that time.
Okay. Okay.
So, and being a not that good student, I never got any recognition. So that was my first moment of glory, where people looked at me and looked at me as if I knew something more than they could imagine. Now I picked on that skill, or I picked on that vibe that I was feeling. I can't say knowledge or anything of that sort, but like an artist, as a child you have the flair to draw, and then you develop yourself into being an artist. So
Okay.
after I discovered this, I did my international certification in graphology. I have been studying and doing my research, gathering samples. Then it became a profession when I was 18. So once I became a professional, then I've been doing
Wow.
working.
So you've been working professionally since the age of 18?
Yes.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
So
Absolutely.
I
So,
think thanks to the disability that I understood, I could
so,
see the patterns.
so see, for all of us, there has to be a trigger point in life
Yes.
for you to take that leap. You know, I think for all of us, there is that trigger. So that would have been yours. That workshop on personality
Yes,
development would have been
that
yours.
was.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yeah.
so glad. And today, when I turn back, I must say that, so many moments where we dismiss it, we feel we do not fit into a box. We feel as if something is not working.
Mm.
We do not know, probably it is about us, or it's about the situation, or as you said, it's a trigger for you to discover something completely different.
Mm.
But as we do not look at it, because we don't have personality goggles, we
Exactly.
only make the problem about my destiny is wrong, I'm in this horrible situation. So we make it only about all these other things which are beyond our control. So the larger idea of using graphology is also for people to accept themselves for who they are, and not label them for being imperfect, but see these gaps and gifts that are hidden within us, but are
Right.
unseen because we don't know how to look at them.
Wonderful. How nicely you put it. How nicely you put it. Yeah. I think we owe it to ourselves. You
Yes.
know, I think we
Yes.
owe it to ourselves because I think a lot of unhappiness stems personal unhappiness, which manifests itself in different ways. It permeates into your relationships. It permeates into your daily work schedule. Because it's because we are not doing perhaps what we were cut out for.
True,
You know,
true.
so we're
I
pushed
have a
into a
question for
situation.
you.
Yeah, tell me.
So, when parents are dealing with kids at this point in time, especially during the lockdown or in this homeschooling kind of situations, what would you tell them? Like, what are those 4 or 5 things they should keep in mind while dealing with their kids?
See, uh, one is spend a lot of quality time with your parents. It is up to the parents to create that stress free, harmonious atmosphere in the house. So keep the stress levels low no matter what the situation is. The children must be in happy environment. Spend a lot of time with the children playing games. It's a very good time for the family to sort of connect. Yeah,
Hmm.
so keep it connected. Keep your channel of communication with the children open, so that the children always they come and talk to you, and make it a point to ask them how they are feeling. How are you feeling? How is your, whoever is there in the house, your spouse, your friend, pick up the phone, communicate. It's very, very important.
Hmm.
So that I would tell the parents to do that all the time. It's not about their homework or their classwork or what they're doing, but how are you
Hmm.
feeling? Are you okay? Are you there? What did you do today? How can I help? Can we get together? Can we do something together? So that they learn, and if there is any stress in the household, uh,
Hmm.
keep it under control. Try and see that it doesn't go down to the child. So I think the only thing that the child is missing, see, whatever they have missed in terms of academics, that can all be made up for. But what they are going through emotionally just now is something that I don't know if we can, this kind of, it's traumatic for the children, and
Of
this can
course.
stunt the emotional growth. Though it's a temporary,
True.
phase, but it can stunt. So you have to be that person. The parent has to be that person to help to ensure that that stunting doesn't happen. that growth, that emotional growth.
Especially because they're not interacting with the
Correct,
external world in a
correct, correct.
physical way.
Yes, yes,
Makes
yes.
sense.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So that is what I would, it just connecting and communicating. I would say that's the key to all the time to connect with your children and find out what's going on in your mind, what's going on in your head. All the time being in touch, that kind of thing. It's
Is
very
it not
important.
interfering for parents to do that? Like,
No, I don't think so. Not at this time. Not at this time. Not at this time. Because
because now kids have their independent preferences, they have their personal private things that are happening. Is
it's
it not
okay.
like
It's okay. But you, as a parent, of course, you have to use your. I mean, you cannot do this with a 25-year-old or a 24-year-old. You have to within limits. But yes. Hey,
but
what you
being
doing?
available is crucial, is what
Yes,
you're
being
saying.
available and keep telling, making it abundantly clear to your child that you are there for them no matter what. So the child does not feel alienated, lost, lonely at any point in time.
Which is
Because
a bigger concern right now
bigger
for all of
concern, their emotional health, that during the pandemic, depression has surged 100%.
totally.
Yes, and so taking care to see that these things don't happen in in the house within the household. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
So that's very important. Yeah.
So let's move to our next segment, which is called Autograph Please, where I'm going to look at your signature and talk about the gaps in which, the way people perceive you in your public image and the way you are as a person. Now, it's very interesting. Your signature talks about that public image, that social, formal persona, and your handwriting talks about who you are. And all of us have these gaps. I'm just going to talk about what are your gaps and how that, how your friends understand you and how your probably teachers understand you, that we're going to talk about. Now, the first thing that comes to my mind, because as I was referring to your adventurous nature and your exploratory behavior, as a principal, as a public person, you can become very focused and very clear to a point of being strict, which if you tell your friends who have known you while growing up, they would never ever believe.
That's so true. That is so true. That is so true.
You
Oh,
of all the people cannot turn
you
into
can.
this.
That is so true. That is so true. And I have no answer to that question because I cannot say the way I function in school and the way I function at home with
Sure, and
friends.
we do not find the difference because it is so natural to us.
Yes,
We start believing this is how we behave. In office, I
yes,
work like this. At home, I
yes,
behave like this.
yes,
But
yes,
the differences are only found by others who are seeing you in both the
yes.
situations.
So some of them couldn't ever believe that I would be a successful. I mean, honestly, my friends have told me this on my face that, you can't be. You can't do this job you can't do. But I know I can. Yeah.
One, you can, of course, but we can also not dismiss their points because they have seen you being the rule breaker. That you are. But yes, I think that is like how life has shaped you, this profession has shaped
I
you.
think all of us to a degree are Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, right?
Totally. Totally.
Yeah, but that's
So
okay. That's okay. As T.S. Eliot said, you have to wake up every morning. You put on a face to meet the face, right? All of us do that. Yeah.
of course, and the whole beauty is to know what face do we put up. And
Correct.
so many times in the work that I read about, I have come to realize that the ability to remove all these faces that we wear to be with other people and be as transparent as we can with ourselves in the mirror
Hmm.
is an essential part of today's social life, because every Instagram post has some form of filter, every conversation has politically right, socially
Correct.
right
Right.
norms that we follow.
I agree.
So we got to do that, we cannot avoid it. But sometimes these masks become so real that we just do not know how to
How
remove
to
them,
remove it?
and
You're
that
true.
becomes like the bigger
Yeah.
conflict,
Yeah.
internal conflict, more than anything
Yeah.
else.
So my husband bears the brunt of that. That I carry back from school sometimes.
Okay. I used to say this, that a kindergarten teacher
Yeah.
talks to her husband also in the same manner. Do you
Yeah.
agree?
Yeah.
Have you eaten this? Have you picked that up?
No,
Like,
no. And I especially I don't. Oh, cross your T, dot your I. This preposition is not right. You should frame your sentence properly. He gets so mad with me. And I'm not your
Oh.
student. I'm writing a business letter. I'm conveying my point. It's okay. Yeah, so I do. I think all of us tend to do that, to carry
Yes,
it a little.
totally. We
But
do carry.
yeah, we do carry it. Yeah, we do carry it.
Thank you so much for joining us today. This was
Yeah,
wonderful and
yeah.
it was so easy going. I didn't expect it to be this easy going
So
and
now
fun,
you
but
know all principles and not to be put in the same slot.
box.
Yes, same
Yes, I
box. Yes.
agree. Now I'm going to look at their handwriting before making my conclusion about them.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much,
you so
Aditi. It
much.
was an absolute pleasure being here. It was a very
Thank
novel experience for me. And
you.
I honestly, when I came, I was quite skeptical because I wasn't sure because of how handwriting, how could you? But yes, you have hit the nail on the head many times,
Thank you.
more than
Thank you
once.
so
Thank you
much.
so much. It's an absolute pleasure.
I love this autograph please segment. Every single time when I reveal something interesting about the guest, they chuckle, they laugh, they really bring out the truth about their personality, which is known by a very, very few people. Now, that's the power of signature that talks about your public image, and handwriting, which is about the true personality. It's like a mystery, it's like a code that you got to decode every single time. By the way, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Absolutely Right. On our Friday episode, I will be introducing one more journaling question which will blow your mind to look at a different perspective within. It's a handwritten journaling process and the specific therapy that I use, which is called graphotherapy, which makes this particular journaling style grapho journaling. Let's talk all about it on our Friday episode. If you haven't checked out the previous one where I spoke about unwillingness, go ahead and do that. I think it's really interesting to see where you are unwilling to change your life, and most of the time we don't get to see that. And if you are convinced about graphology by now and would love to know more about personality, signatures, autograph, and see the people underneath that, then come join me on our graphology masterclass. Every first Saturday of the month, we start our new batch. Let's connect on Friday. Till then, happy writing.